But anyway, I'd encourage people to check out my website where I write about a lot of these same topics I deal with on the show at michaelcross.net. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at PsychoMike777. Okay, what I would like to deal with tonight is how to basically not be vulnerable to one of the major ailments I think we have in modern society, and that is narcissism. I'm going to explain a little bit about why I think narcissism is on the rise in our culture, and I don't mean the full-fledged narcissism that, we debate about as a personality disorder. There may be more of a, some people that are more prone to it because of genetics, for instance. But I mean more of what you could call secondary narcissists. Just like a secondary psychopath is not really a psychopath, but has learned how to adapt to a psychopathic work environment or political environment. A secondary narcissist is someone who just gets caught up into the whole culture of narcissism. I guess you could, in a sense, say that we have a lot of society that is what you could call narcissistic wannabes. And whereas most people would never admit to it, in fact, one of the ways you can actually find out if someone's a true narcissist is just ask them, are you a narcissist? And they found in research that an actual narcissist will usually answer yes. They will admit it. They understand it. Whereas a narcissistic wannabe will go to great ends to pretend that they're not, or to illustrate that they're not. So anyway, I'm going to deal with why we have this epidemic in our society, and then how you can shield yourself from it. Because if you are living in this culture, it can become very burdensome to have to adapt to it. If you have a strong enough image of yourself and values and so forth, and you refuse to be caught up into this whole thing, you can feel kind of isolated and lonely and depressed because of it. Even if you're, just because you're an outsider, which this would make you somewhat of an outsider, doesn't mean you've got it all together. It can still bother you. So anyway, what causes this kind of thing to take place? Well, first of all, essentially what a narcissist is, and I'm going to be very, very brief on this, is a person with a high degree of self-worth coupled with a diminished view of the worth of others. So it's not like you're someone who feels like, I'm a great special person and so are these other people. Or it could even be not in the sense of, I'm a great person and so are these other people who are doing great things. A true narcissist actually would have a high degree of self-worth, even grandiose self-worth, but diminish all other people, even people who've achieved a great deal more than they have in life. Now, another major component of narcissism is a lack of empathy. Okay? The inability to really feel for other people. The inability to kind of walk in their shoes and to understand where they're coming from. That is another trademark of narcissism. And, these things can actually be something that's not only the true narcissist, but also the secondary narcissist. Now, I would say that I'm just going to start right out here. One of the big reasons for this narcissism in society today, I think, stems back to Edward Bernays. He wasn't the only one that kind of got the consumerist ethic going, but he was one of the major ones, if not the major one. He is the one that created our modern advertising as we know it. And the thing is that he quite correctly understood his uncle, Sigmund Freud's, research and conclusions that people are motivated by subconscious fears and desires. And some of those basically are the desire to fit in, the desire to be loved, the desire to have sex. Many people think that's all Freud's all about. It's not completely what Freud's all about. And, security. And so if these are people's desires, you can then sell them things based on making them feel inadequate in those areas. Now, the reason I bring Bernays up, even though this sounds contradictory, make people feel inadequate unless they fill up with the need, is that what happened after this kind of ethic really started growing is the media and the advertising started dealing more with you can be someone special if you buy these things. So first, they rip you apart. First, they present you as being insufficient, weak, vulnerable, lacking. Okay, this is really, there's a lot of feminists that quite rightly so point out that this is aimed a lot at women, but it's also, in fairness, aimed at men. And so the idea is to really emphasize what you don't have. And then give you a substitute to hand you over products, designer labeled jeans or handbags or a certain type of car or a certain occupation or a certain this or a certain that. And then when you have that, that will compensate for your weakness, at least according to the advertiser. And then what will happen is you will feel not just adequate, which back in Bernays' time, it was more like, hey, compensate and feel better about yourself, but to actually feel superior to others that don't have it, that don't fit in the same way. So, in other words, this is a component of narcissism, and it's really driven by our media culture today. Now, I'm going to get back to media in just a moment, but we can also look at such things as the idea that we've gotten into an era, and this was especially true a few years ago. I remember in education, oh my gosh, in the late 80s, early 90s, everything was supposed to be teach kids that they are special just because they are special, and no longer connect that to accomplishment. And, they've integrated this kind of concept into physical education where, everybody's a winner. And then, even if one person does a 4-minute mile and the other one does a 40-minute mile, it's okay. They're all a winner, no matter how much they strived or didn't strive. And then on the top of that, you got into the idea that such things as awarding people for certain accomplishments academically was not the most important thing to do anymore. So, because there was an idea that it was unfair. The problem with that is then that everyone gets an inflated sense of themselves. In fact, it's even resulted in great inflation in both public education as well as higher education. And so everyone's feeling like I am just the smartest person on the face of the earth, even though they really have not accomplished that much. And that's true, not just in education, but also in parenting. And so that has contributed to narcissism, I believe, in today's society. Another aspect that connects to the whole lack of empathy, perhaps, is that we are more isolated. We have children growing up instead of maybe, 50 years ago when the average person in America growing up had 2 to 3 siblings on average, and they had to learn how to integrate, cooperate, and to also understand each other because you were stuck with each other for all the time you were growing up. But now we have a situation where we have a lot of 1-child and 2-child families, and often the 2-child families are separated by a great deal of age, and so therefore there is not that natural connection in a family situation, not that, what Alfred Adler talked about when it came to birth order, and also the aspect of basically learning how to fit into modern society by, learning while in the family, because that's where you're supposed to learn. So anyway, we are a more isolated people too, because, you take a look at playgrounds nowadays, and, you read these articles all the time about some mom lets her kid go play on the playground alone, even though she's within sight of the playground, and some nosy neighbor calls the cops, and, suddenly she's got the Child Protective Services Division on her case, and that sort of thing. Well, and also we have all these fear-mongering in media where it's like, oh my gosh, someone's going to kidnap your kid and sacrifice him on the altar of Satan, at some sort of festival in the woods someplace, run by members of Congress. Okay, this kind of thing has really, really gone out there, and so people are afraid to let their kids go out. And so increasingly, when they do go out, they're supervised. And when they're supervised, this creates a false environment for them. Everyone has to be good. Everyone, you don't get those lessons on the playground that often do round out a kid's character. And we also, I think, are in a situation where, we've got not just what I said about the media, compensating, but we also have a media that increasingly, especially that's aimed at young children, that says that it's not going to school and studying that's important. It's how you look and what clothes you're wearing and what other things you're doing and what kind of smart aleck comments you can make to a teacher or to your fellow students. And the thing is, this creates a false persona, as Carl Jung would put it, a persona that starts getting a complex built around it because you start believing you are the persona that's been developed by the media. Okay? And it's not you, but you're living up to a false persona. Maybe you look a certain way. Maybe you have a kind of a Barbie doll build and you're blonde, and so you live up to the persona that's presented in the media about how you're supposed to act. Or you look a little bit more on the nerdy side, and so you act like that. It's like purchasing a persona. And that's what we are doing when we sit in front of the TV and let it dictate what we should be like. Now, there's also the social media. Oh my gosh, look at that. We got all this kind of stuff about social media saying, you take the best pictures, you go to some glamour shot and get a picture taken and put it on the Facebook and so forth. And then you look at what everyone else is doing and you're competing with them for the best pictures and who gets the most likes and so forth. I've seen even people in their 50s do this, okay? Oh my gosh, why didn't I get more likes on this picture I took, when I was on vacation? It's like, who cares? But this is developing a type of narcissism. Now, how do you discount it? I think, first of all, what you need to do is you need to get into a mindset that first you have to recognize the motivation behind the media and recognize that it's ultimately not there to benefit you. It's there to sell you stuff. It's there to mold you into something that maybe you're not. And so I think that's the most important thing. In fact, I think if you got rid of media altogether, as in television viewing, in America, you would have a severe decrease in narcissistic attitudes. I think the next thing is make sure that you recognize that social media is fake. It is fake. People always are putting the things up that they want to impress each other. And most of the time it has nothing to do with accomplishment. It has to do with, some sort of look at me, you could be 47 years old and like, look, I'm still an MTV star or something like that. Okay. That's another biggie. Social media. Sometimes putting it down is a good idea. Maybe going out in the woods and connecting to nature. Maybe connecting to things that have more of a foundation, more of a purpose in life. Maybe spirituality. Although some of these televangelists, I think, are suffering from some narcissism personally. But connecting to spiritual bedrocks. knowing your value. I think one of the greatest things is just to go out on a really clear night and just look up at the stars. Okay? Things like that. These help you to develop yourself as a person. Now, I don't think you can really build empathy in a person, but it is important not to let it be torn down. So you need to try to resist that. Resist these messages that are always aimed at you to just not care about others, to see other people as objects. Okay? That's a biggie of getting rid of. And finally, I don't really want to make it sound like that I'm promoting the whole self-esteem movement, because I'm not. But look at yourself for the worth that you are as an individual. Okay? And also strive to accomplish things. Improve yourself. You're not special because of just sitting there in the chair and you're just so special. You're special because you go out and actually develop those, God-given qualities that you have. Whether that's physical, spiritual, mental, helping others, intellectual. These are, there's always room to improve no matter what your age. And that will reduce the narcissism. Accomplishment does not get narcissism, unless it's a narcissist, but it actually makes you value the process of getting to a certain goal. And that's what's important ultimately. So I think if you do these kinds of things, you can survive and thrive in a society that is caught up in so much narcissism. It reminds me more and more of the in the Hunger Games, Capital City, this ultimate narcissistic playground of, people and everything. And once you get to that point, I think you can actually adapt and actually find a lot more happiness and self-fulfillment even in this narcissistic society we call the United States and Europe today. Anyway, just wanted to get that off my chest here. And, it looks like we're out of time. So I would encourage people to tune in next week to another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. Take care.
Visit pigmindnews.com and to subscribe, youtube.com/pigmind.